Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome in to a coffee break. Everybody's already getting to it in the comments. What the heck are the New York Jets doing hiring Nathaniel Hackett as their OC? We're going to dive into all the details and the drama around it. But we got DMAC, Andrew Mason, Rachel V. Hill with you for the next 45 minutes. Gentlemen, how are we? How did we wake up? Well, you two are probably already awake. I was scrolling on my phone this morning when I saw the news pop up. So I had just woken up and I was like, oh, this will be fun for today. So what did we think of it?
It gave me great entertainment while I was working out this morning on my bike. By the way, I cannot wait. I love the snow. Don't get me wrong, because I love skiing. But I miss my bike being outside. I can't wait to get outside. I'm like a gerbil on a hamster wheel. Why is a gerbil on a hamster wheel? Should be on a gerbil wheel. Anyway, it gave me tons of entertainment because usually it's boring as hell. But no, I was thoroughly entertained reading all the comments about Nathaniel Hackett to the Jets. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, are we going to get a test? It wasn't Hackett. Was it Wilson? What was it? I can't wait.
Yep, from one Wilson to another Wilson, maybe, depending on what happens with Zach Wilson. But
you know what it's really about, Mace.
Oh, we all know what this is about. This is about trying to get Aaron Rodgers. I mean, now there are a lot of levels to this if the Jets try to get Aaron Rodgers, including the fact that Jets ownership, Woody Johnson, is as in Johnson & Johnson. And we know about some of Aaron Rodgers' comments the last couple of years.
Oh, look at Mace
regarding vaccines and all that.
Look at Mace.
So I'm really stirring the pot here. So there are so many levels to this that New York area sports talk is just going to have a field day for the next 6 weeks. Christmas came late for them because now you've got all the Aaron Rodgers possibilities, and then of course even Nathaniel Hackett. That'll consume a couple of days of talk for them. But yeah, we are, like you said, we're gonna find out like who was at fault. You've got Albert Breer tweeting out that Nathaniel Hackett was the victim of a, quote, political war, unquote, inside the Broncos organization. So we're going to get to that today because we can peel some layers on that one, I think.
And I say let's get to it because I don't know if the wording was his best judgment, I would say, but political war, is used on this. What are we taking from this? What's our biggest takeaway? Are we thinking this is a war between him and Wilson, him and George Paton, him and ownership? Like, who, when you first read this, were you like, all right, that's who this is against?
Yeah, I think it's more about management and what he had to do. Like, I'll go back to the question I asked Nathaniel Hackett. Is there any situation that you can imagine where you would replace Russell Wilson if it was for the betterment of the team? And his answer was, right now, no. And then he wanted to circle back and erase the right now just to say no. If we wanted any example of a political situation, it's that answer right now. Because the obvious answer, guys, is yes, of course. Because in football, the team and the game means more than one player. So the answer is, of course, I'd replace him. I'd replace anybody here. No, there's a standard that we have to live up to. And if they're letting it down, we have to, or the cliche next man up means absolutely nothing. But look at what Nathaniel Hackett answered. Right now, no. And he thought right now was too harsh. I didn't think it went far enough. He thought it was too harsh. Yes, it was all politics.
Yeah. And I think like even beyond that, beyond the answer on the quarterback as well, you look into the fact that in his third week, George Paton is reaching out to bring in a babysitter, someone to handle game management. As DMAC would often say, Dad, I
want to run a reverse. I want to punt, Dad. No, I got to go for it. Dad.
The thing is, though, you have somebody being brought in by the general manager to kind of be a guardrail on the head coach during the season. When have we ever seen that?
Never
Never have I seen anything quite like this. And and then the other thing on politics is this: you have a new owner, and you have a second-year GM and a first-year head coach, and clearly you have a GM who is trying to position himself to where the owner leans on him for football guidance, support, and all that. And so, how do you think those conversations go
Brutal.
when Greg Penner is talking with George Payton about what's going on? I'm sure, I'm sure, and I would be surprised if there wasn't some element of, if we can, do something different with the coaching, it'll turn out differently. And that's part of the politics that gets played, those back channels where potentially one is blaming the other, saying, oh, well, this is actually on so-and-so, it's not on me. It happens all the time. It's nothing that's not, it's very common in struggling NFL organizations. It's just when you have a new owner, it takes it to another notch.
I heard
George Payton essentially.
I heard the funniest story real quick. That George Payton once remarked to somebody in the building, I don't know if Hackett knows what he's doing, but like, just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, we're hiring a coach to coach the coaches. We're putting up basketball hoops in the team meeting room. They did a lot of like zany things, and George Payton just was like, okay. Like, there's a lot of energy here. Like, that was the whole thing. Don't forget, we've talked about this before. They blew out the media room, which was in a very smart little place, for a second game room. Seriously, that is not a joke. They put the media in the war bunker in the field house, so they could have an extra ping pong table, an extra one. Rachel, not they already had a game room. It's an extra set of like games for the players and lounges. I'm sure George Payton must have been like, what did I do here? Like, what is happening? Because the coach does get to set the culture of the team. I mean, that actually is his job. So George Payton allowed it to happen. But George Payton must have been like, George Payton is just not like that. He's a button-down guy. Like you say, Rachel, you've said he's the number one problem. I think number two, but whatever, it's a problem. But you want to talk about a political nightmare. What a catastrophe. And Mace, you didn't even bring up changing the play calling. How do you think that was? What was the politics behind that?
Yeah.
Mace, I'll let you go. Go for it.
Well, I think that was Nathaniel Hackett saying, I got to try something to save my skin here.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that was, okay, if I get fired, I get fired, but I don't want to not try this to salvage things.
I bet he was pressured to do it, Mace. I bet it wasn't his call.
I'm sure there was some external pressure as well, but I think with I think also with Hackett, it's all right. We're 3-6. I've got to try something here to try to prevent being the shortest tenured head coach in the history of the Denver Broncos.
I think so. Going back to what May said before, I think George Payton saved his butt by saying it's time to get rid of Nathaniel Hackett 2 weeks before the season ends. But then DMAC, on top of what you just said, you almost made it seem like Hackett was also up there on the problems. And I know you have him as problem number 4, but he built this, what's the word I'm looking for? Not chemistry.
Culture.
Thank you. Culture. So wouldn't he be up there a little bit higher than number 4 then? Because he's the one that allowed all of this, circus to almost happen.
Listen, he was over his head, and he's problem number 4. It's still a problem. Even as problem number 4, it's a problem you've got to fix, okay? As the head coach, you can't be the 4th biggest problem on the team or you're toast. Nothing you do about injuries. Injuries just happen. Although, perhaps the way that you held your practices and the way you ran things did result in injuries. So maybe you are problem number 3 and injuries are number 4 because you basically caused the injuries. I don't know. That being said, it's going to be absolutely the one thing, if you really watch closely, and this is where I get away from any personal stuff with Russell Wilson, because I saw several people break down the film of the Broncos during the season. And when you watch these breakdowns that have nothing to do with all the quirks of Russell Wilson, it's just X's and O's in football. It is crazy how many times, as it's easily pointed out, that Russ just missed things over the course of the year for whatever reason. And the people breaking down the film couldn't understand it either. Nobody really could, because it was so painfully obvious with what was going on. So that is probably what he sold the Jets on, guys. They probably looked at film and they said, here's my play design. Here's what we were doing. Here's what I would do in this situation with the Jets. Quarterback's got to recognize this. And here's what Russell Wilson did. So I think Hackett threw a bunch of people under the bus to get that Jets job. And don't forget, Robert Saleh knows him. He does. And he trusts him. So everybody out there that thinks that Nathaniel Hackett was the biggest problem, okay, let's see. And they're obviously going to make a play at Aaron Rodgers, and I think they're going to get him. I think that makes perfect sense. I think the Jets are 0 for 2 with high drafted quarterbacks. They should just do it again, but I get it. They may feel like we're just a quarterback away and we can't be patient anymore. Don't forget, guys, this is crazy. So the Broncos haven't made the playoffs in 7 years. They haven't made the playoffs in 12 years. Mm-hmm. So think about the fire under their butts right now just to have a winning season. So I think they're going to pony up the dough, get Rodgers to New York, and let the chaos begin.
Mace, is Rodgers going?
I think he's going to end up with the Jets, yeah, because with the Packers, the fact that they descended to 8-9, and you can detail all the reasons.
Time to move on.
Oh, yeah. In Wisconsin, if there's a Wisconsin sports coffee break, I'm sure they can dive into all of that.
They had a great run. They had a great run.
And basically, it's over. It's a chance to for Brian Gutekunst to press the reset button. Mm-hmm. Take this year to find out if Jordan Love is their guy.
Yeah, they gotta know.
And if he's not, then you go back into the draft. And if you have a bad enough season, who knows? Maybe you're talking about Drake May being in Green Bay. I mean, Drake May for Green Bay. Doesn't that just roll off the tongue, right?
They really have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And history is on their side because, well, first of all, Rodgers wasn't a first-round draft pick. They got Don Majkowski was there, right? They traded for
no. Favre was a second-round pick in Atlanta, and they traded for him.
Right.
Yeah, and Majkowski, the Magic Man, baby.
Yeah. So, and then Rodgers sat on the bench for 3 years, basically until he got run. So, hey, rightfully so in Packerland, they're probably saying, "Oh, this is what we do. We train a quarterback for 3 years, and then they play for 15." You know, because that's what they've done for the past 30 years.
True. How much are the Broncos saving now with Hackett signing with the Jets?
Depends on what the contract terms are. I mean, let's say that they've given him a standard coordinator contract, might be like 3 years, 4.5, or maybe 3 years, $4 million. So what he was making, you'd cut off about $1.33 million. So there will be offset. He actually, by going to the Jets, he doesn't get any more money than he would have had before because of standard contract offsets. But usually those offsets require that you have to attempt to get a job, which is why Vic Fangio, I think, did that interview with the Jaguars last year and then didn't take a job. At least he can say, well, I tried to get something. I didn't. And there was no offset for him this past year. But the Broncos, they will get a little bit of a benefit. And then if Hackett does well and someone gives him a second chance at head coach, I doubt it. But, I mean, coaches get recycled all the time, right? So True. if he does well and goes somewhere else, and then there'd be even more of an offset. I think one of the interesting things here also is what this may reveal about Ejiro Evero, because
he's probably getting a call.
Probably is.
Typical.
Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. Anyway, Ejiro Evero, I think if he had gotten a job, would have brought in Nathaniel Hackett as his offensive coordinator. Two of them obviously go all the way back to their UC Davis days 2 decades ago. Hi, D-Mac.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So what this tells me is that Nathaniel Hackett, probably views kind of the chance to work with Aaron Rodgers, maybe more than the chance to work with Evero again, and B, that maybe Evero doesn't end up as somebody's head coach, and this is where Hackett had to go to take that job.
Real quick, we just had Mike Kliss send out DeMeco Ryan emerges as top Broncos head coach candidate. Boom.
Wow.
Not hired, but there he is.
Okay. Wow.
You guys. And that's what I've been thinking this whole time, because it has been really, really silent. And he's kind of the only reason of why would it still be so silent. So
good for Mike. Mike, hey, I got to give some props to Mike Kliss, man. If you've just been following the reporting on this from the jump, Mike has been on top of everything. So good for Mike, man. I would put a lot of stock into that report by Mike. So what exactly did he say? I'm curious.
The headline is a top candidate, not the top candidate.
Sure.
And just kind of parsing through the story real quick, also says that others that remain in the mix include Dan Quinn, Sean Payton, and Jim Caldwell, according to a source. But Ryans appears to be a top choice.
Hey, guys, I'm getting a call from Mike Kliss right now. You want me to step away for a second, and I can call Mike and get right back to you?
I love it.
All right, I'll give you a second. I want to call Mike. I'll get right back to you.
Okay. You never know what's going to happen here on Coffee Break. We're live, and that's what makes the show so fun. What do you like about DeMeco Ryans if he is a top candidate for the Denver Broncos, Mace?
Well, first of all, before that, I was actually just on Players Club before I came on this show. And the thing with DeMeco Ryans is this. We are all putting together pieces of a puzzle, but we don't have all the pieces. But one thing that we could kind of add up and say is trying to answer the question, why is nothing appearing to happen this week? The only logical answer to that question is that a candidate that they want is not available for things to progress, whether it is to have a second interview or to be hired. And that's why it points to DeMeco Ryans, because everybody else you could have that you've already talked with, you could have conversations with at this point, but you can't talk with DeMeco Ryans until next week. And that's whether they win the conference championship game or not. What I like about DeMeco Ryans, obviously an excellent defensive tactician. He's been in an environment that seems to foster good head coaches. I mean, Robert Saleh, the jury is out. The results have been mixed, but he inherited a mess. I'm not sure that Zach Wilson's struggles fall entirely on Robert Saleh. I think there are other elements there involved with that. It's not that I don't like this, but I have questions about DeMeco Ryans. And specifically, it's what's the plan for the offense? And this is where I need to know that there are going to be experienced voices in that room, whether as play caller or if you go with a first-time play caller, who's around the first-time play caller. If this staff looks a lot like Nathaniel Hackett's staff, where you've got a bunch of coaches who are level jumping, that's going to be a concern. That's something that I'm not sure that Greg Penner would be on board for, having just witnessed a staff of a lot of coaches who were at their highest career level under Nathaniel Hackett. That was part of the problem. Hackett was going for a young staff. If DeMeco Ryans wants a more seasoned and experienced staff, I think that would reduce the concern about being a first-timer. The other thing also on DeMeco Ryans is he played a huge chunk of his career under Gary Kubiak. Now he is coached under Kyle Shanahan. So in a weird way, even though he's never been part of the Broncos, he's been part of Broncos philosophy, as it were, over the generations for most of the last 15 years, excepting, of course, a time that he was in Philadelphia. But, and this is, when he was in Philadelphia, Pat Shurmur was on the staff on the offensive side as well. So there too is another Broncos connection. He's about as Broncos as you can get without actually being a Bronco.
Right. And lots of people are saying in the comments, like they like DeMeco, but it's really going to depend who's the OC. Because to be honest, this all revolves around Russell Wilson. But one thing I did like is Kyle Shanahan did say, DeMeco out there with San Francisco and the 49ers, he does look at the defense and the offense too. He's kind of looking at this full circle thing that they're building out there with the 49ers. So I do like that. But if you had to put a guess and a name, who do you think would be the OC for the Denver Broncos? I know that's kind of a tough question because there's a ton of options, but if you just had a gut feeling.
Gut feeling is Brian Griese.
Okay. And do we like
coach.
that?
That's where you've got, for me to be on board, you got to have some more experience over there. You got to have, and I'll just throw a couple of names out there that have connections. One, Anthony Lynn, who is on the 49ers staff now, former Chargers head coach, also a former Broncos assistant. The connection goes all the way back to Mike Shanahan. Maybe you're talking about Anthony Lynn as an assistant head coach and Brian Griese as a play caller. Anthony Lynn had huge issues and struggles calling plays when he was with Detroit, to the point where they stripped him of the play calling responsibilities. So I'm not sure I would want him calling the plays, but I wouldn't mind him in the room. If you're going to have a Brian Griese or somebody who's never called plays before, and Griese's obviously done an amazing job coaching up Brock Purdy this year, then I would want someone like that. Another name, and again, sort of an indirect connection here, is I would say bring back Mike Munchak as the O-line coach. And of course, the thing about Munchak is he came aboard in 2019, and he came aboard with Rich Scangarello coming over from the 49ers to be the offensive coordinator. So if you're talking about someone who could coach those zone blocking principles, Mike Munchak, he's a scheme independent coach. He can coach gap, he can coach zone, and he can do that just fine. But if I look around Ryans' staff and I
Hello. I don't know what just happened. I don't know what just happened. Everybody just lost connection, I guess.
Well, yeah, I think
I'm back.
That has to be a StreamYard thing, because
I was like, what
everything just went kaput.
I'm back.
Hello, everybody. Yes, apparently we are having technical difficulties today. Hello, we are happy to have you all. Hang with us. Not sure what just happened, DMAC. In case you missed it, both Mace and I just got dropped from.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Our platform. So
where did I leave off? No, zone blocking.
Yes, you were.
Okay.
D-Mac, we're gonna get to you, but go ahead, Mace.
Yeah. So basically, like, when you're thinking of a staff, you're thinking of connections. The fact that Munchak was brought aboard when Scangarello became the offensive coordinator shows, okay, he can coach zone, he can coach gap, he can do whatever. He's a scheme independent coach. But if you have a staff that has an Anthony Lynn and a Mike Munchak, then that's the sort of staff that would assuage my trepidations about having a first-time head coach. And look, I don't want it to be like Dom Capers brought in his experience, but he shuffled off to the side. I would like to see some very experienced, knowledgeable people with prominent roles on the staff. And I think, here's the thing though, I think DeMeco Ryans, when he spoke with the Broncos search committee, did lay out something like that, because otherwise I don't think Greg Penner would be considering hiring DeMeco Ryans if it was going to be another level jumping staff of coaches doing jobs that they hadn't done before.
No, 100% agree with you. D-Mac, what'd you learn?
Well, Mike, I talked to Mike briefly, and more or less confirmed what he wrote. So in his article, he's talking about DeMeco Ryans, like you see here, being the top coaching candidate. What it says to is the concept of circling back to Jim Harbaugh. Well, I think they may have logically thought about it. No bueno. Also in there, subtraction by omission is David Shaw. is not included in what Mike wrote about.
But Jim Caldwell is. I thought that was
Jim Caldwell is, and so is Dan Quinn, according to Mike. But I believe Mike doesn't write something for a laugh. I think he's a serious journalist, and I think the lead that DeMeco Ryans has right now is significant. The twist is, here's the twist. He may be the top person for the Texans as well. And he has a history there with the Texans. He played for the Texans. And although it seems laughable that we would lose out to such a haphazard ownership group like the Houston Texans. Yeah. Yes, Mace. What?
Number 2 overall pick.
What's that?
Houston.
Yeah.
They're getting a quarterback.
Right. So now you get to DeMeco Ryans may have, we thought it was going to be Sean Payton making a choice. It may be DeMeco Ryans making a choice, and it could come down to his choice about the quarterback situation. I would guess the money for DeMeco Ryans will be very similar between the Texans and the Broncos. I really don't see the Broncos throwing him $20 million or anything like that. Nathaniel Hackett got like 5+ per, and so I would say Ryans would, probably get 6 to 7 per from either team. So I think it's going to come down to how he views his future and what he wants. So the Broncos do have to have a backup plan, but reading my Kliss, it's DeMeco Ryans is candidate number 1.
Okay, so I had a question and it just completely slipped my mind for you there, DMAC. It's going to come back to me. I know it is.
Well, if you want to talk about the perilous journey of first-time coaches, we're here again. And listen, I do respect the fact that the Walton Penner Group, the WPG, I do respect that they want to go through their process their way, and they don't want to have any bias towards anybody. They just want to see who they have the best feeling about. So by that standard, what they're doing makes sense. The problem is with the WPG, they do lack experience in these matters, and they don't know the inherent pitfalls of first-time head coaches. Why? Because they're first-time owners. And, everything's just being blamed on Nathaniel Hackett. This is George Payton getting over again. And boy, oh boy, the trust they put in George Payton it's wild. Because George Payton, if they hire DeMeco Ryans, you want to talk about good as gold as the GM. He ain't going anywhere. He's not getting fired.
I disagree with that. First of all, the Walton Penner Group, what is their experience as an NFL ownership group? It's seeing a first-time head coach with a bunch of coaches on the staff who are in their highest positions and seeing that completely melt down. I don't believe DeMeco Ryans is emerging as one of the favorites here for the job if he did not offer an answer that allayed those fears, which would include having some more experienced assistant coaches around him to help the process out.
Well,
second,
Nate,
and
are you opening the door? And let's use the Texans connection.
Yeah.
Is Gary Kubiak about to walk through the doors as some sort of offensive assistant coach specialist sort of dude?
Maybe, but I think what I told Rachel while you were away is I would think in terms of Anthony Lynn, who's on the 49ers staff right now, and Brian Griese.
Yeah, okay, but that's the same problems, Mace. That does not answer the problems that you brought up.
No, it does. It does, because Brian Griese would be a first-time play caller, but Anthony Lynn would be there as a former head coach who's had some success to not only help Griese, but also kind of help and be there for DeMeco Ryans. Another level that I would bring it to is bring back Mike Munchak, who was brought in under Rich Scangarello when they were doing zone blocking, so he can coach that. You can put together a staff that's got some experience. And then as for George Payton, how do we know that DeMeco Ryans in his own mind, when he sits down with Rob Walton and Kerry Walton Penner, doesn't bring up a name like Adam Peters, who worked with the Broncos, and then went to the 49ers, which I know would make our friend Cecil Lammy very happy.
Yeah, but
if they
Mace,
brought
hold
him
on,
back.
time out. He has not had a second interview yet. And there's zero chance he's going to bring up Adam Peters as a GM candidate with George Payton sitting in the room, okay?
No, but he wouldn't. But Payton's not going to be in the room for the second interview. That's
Oh,
what
so
I mean.
now-
That's why
now
I said.
we
I mean,
decided-
I mean that he brings it up when he has the conversation with Rob Walton, Greg Penner, and Kerry Walton Penner next week.
They said in the second interview that George Payton was going to be outside,
Right.
and he was going to show the tour of the facilities to the coach. He will not be in the room with the Walton Penner group.
Guys,
This
I
is why.
respect
This kind of thing is why, because they know the coach might have a different idea. And oh, by the way, if you're DeMeco Ryans, you look at the 49ers and you realize one of the reasons it was successful is that you had a coach and the GM who were on the same page, that you had John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan that were in this together from day one. And so Ryan's experience in terms of seeing a best practice is having that GM that is in lockstep with the coach from the first day. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if when he's having the conversation without George Payton in the room, if he's saying, yeah, we've got somebody in San Francisco that I'd love to bring over that I know with whom I know I could work really well.
I would love to make a gentleman's bet with either of you if you want to go down this path. George Payton will not be fired by the Denver Broncos if DeMeco Ryans is hired for at least 3 years.
A coffee bet, right? Then there?
A coffee bet on coffee break. No, he's the guy, man. And listen, first of all, if it is DeMeco Ryans, whoever the coach is, 3 years, no matter what, because what would happen is if it really is a disaster, it will finally be Russell Wilson's fault. Okay. It won't be George Payton's fault. It really will be Russell Wilson's fault. They'll just reset. Guys, I know what you're saying, Mace, but there is zero chance, in my opinion, DeMeco Ryans is throwing George Payton under the bus for Adam Peters. No, I mean, George Payton is hiring DeMeco Ryans. And George Payton.
Greg Penner's hiring DeMeco Ryans, not George Payton.
Do you know something that we don't know?
George Payton is making Greg Penner think that Greg Penner is hiring DeMeco Ryans. There's some very interesting mind games going on here. But George Payton is very cleverly leading Greg Penner down paths that ensure the job security of George Payton.
Why wouldn't he do Dan Quinn? Dan Quinn is the one who would most clearly secure the job security of George Payton.
Maybe not, because you could just throw him out with the bathwater too, you know, and you know what, Dan Quinn listen, Dan Quinn's not out of this. He is not out of this because now the big question, Rachel, Mace, you got to answer is why would DeMeco Ryans choose the Broncos over the Texans?
Yeah, because honestly, if I were DeMeco Ryans, the reason why I would choose the Broncos over the Texans is ownership, okay? And that Cal McNair is not Bob McNair. Cal McNair is Chris Griffin running an NFL team, basically.
And my reason is, and this it'll seem like it's going to backfire on me, but Russell Wilson can win. And yes, he had a horrible past 2 years, I would say, and last year especially was horrible, but Russell Wilson can win. Even if you do take a quarterback with the number 2 pick, it's still a gamble. It's always a gamble. Look at a lot of the rookie QBs. It's always going to be a gamble. Now, I know they had success with Brock Purdy in San Francisco. He looked great. He's a rookie. He's like the 1 in a million story, though, where you're like, holy smokes, this guy is able to go in there and win playoff games. I don't think that's likely. So that's where I am, where I would say, I know Russell Wilson can win. I do think Nathaniel Hackett was the issue. And so I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. And then also, the payday can happen when you have the Walton Penner group.
I think the biggest reason is the payday. If they just outbid, if they offered DeMeco Ryans $10 million and the Texans are offering $7 million, you probably take the Broncos. But anything other than that, hey, we're assuming he doesn't like ownership. But guys, time out on that. That ownership group drafted him, played him. He probably has deep connections to the ownership group because he was an employee of theirs for what?
Okay. Bob McNair, the late Bob McNair was the owner then, and he was drafted by Rick Smith and Gary Kubiak, right? That they were running the football operations back then. Nick Caserio is running the football operations now. And Cal McNair, I'm sorry, he has not shown any bit of the organizational acumen that Bob McNair did.
Yeah, but he
Cal,
hasn't.
Look, I mean, have you ever heard Sage Rosenfeld's story about Cal McNair?
Mace, I get it. There's other people outside media that look at it that way, but you don't know what his relationship is working as an employee for them and knowing them on a personal level, which may be different than you, Sage Rosenthal. I think if anybody is going to give ownership the benefit of the doubt, it's somebody who was paid by that ownership for a good chunk of his career.
But when you're on the inside, you see the bad stuff too. You're assuming that you only see good. It's only good. Oh, they're signing my paychecks. It's all great.
Mace,
he goes to San Francisco. He sees a different way of operating. He may think, oh, they've actually got their ducks in a row in a way Houston didn't. Maybe so. Knowledge does not necessarily mean that he wants to go to Houston. It might end up revealing the opposite.
All right, I'm going to put you on the witness stand. Did he turn down interviews with two other teams?
Yeah, and yes, he did turn down with interviews with two other teams. One of the ones
was
the Broncos, and one was Houston.
Next question. Did he accept the interview with Houston?
He's also a former player. That's
a yes or no question. You're on the stand.
Yeah, yes, he did. But you're
okay.
I know where you're going. I know where you're going, and I don't like it because you're trying to distill this down to a simple yes or no, and you're trying to distill this down to saying, okay, he must love Houston. He must think that they're the best thing since sliced bread in terms of how they run a team. It is very possible he may, from experience that he has now, seeing another organization that he didn't have before, that he may not think of Houston what he once thought of. And I can say that because I'm one who worked in two organizations as well. And I can tell you working in Carolina changed my view of Denver.
First of all, I love this show. I love having you guys on. I love the arguments we have. I love everybody in the comments. You guys make my morning so much better. Second of all, let's take ownership, quarterback aside. Who has the better team, between the Denver Broncos and the Houston Texans?
The Houston Texans by a mile because they have the number 2 overall pick and they Bryce Young or Stroud or
That's going to be a quarterback, so take that out of it.
All right, the Houston Texans. I'll keep going with the Houston Texans. They're in a weaker division, easier path to the playoffs. The Texans, period. But the quarterback is the major reason. But even if you want to take the quarterback out of it, it's such an easier path because look at their division. Their division is basically garbage compared to the AFC West.
Denver has the better roster today. But like D-Mac said, Houston has the better situation. Even though it may not be as good as it seems because I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence are going anywhere. I think they're only going to get stronger. But in the AFC South, you've got one potential colossus at quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. In the AFC West, you have two, and you might, at least for this year, be looking at Tom Brady taking up residence on just off the strip.
Right.
So, but that being said, if Russell Wilson doesn't work out, maybe you have a path to getting a younger quarterback for the long term, but you're still in the AFC West. So I'd say overall in the situation, it is Houston, even though, again, I have my reservations about ownership compared with Broncos ownership.
You guys realize we could get the humiliating situation of being rejected by DeMeco Ryans for Houston. Like, that is a very real possibility about where things really stand with the Denver Broncos these days.
And that's the risk of having the DeMeco Ryans thing as a favorite out there. That's the risk.
And so I would say, based on everything, I'm not writing out Dan Quinn. I'm not writing off Dan Quinn. But he's clearly not the first choice, you know? And so because he's not the first choice, it does tell me there is some hesitation by the WPG about Russell Wilson. That tells me they're at least aware and are acknowledging there's potential issues with Russell Wilson. I wouldn't say they're writing Russell Wilson off, but I think it's a clear acknowledgement like, okay, it's an issue that needs to be fixed. And I think that's why Quinn doesn't have the job right now.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so here's my other question then. If you're not sure DeMeco Ryans is all in, we know there's talks that go in. If we don't think he's all in, why aren't they doing other interviews? Because that makes me believe, oh, they've had talks with DeMeco Ryan and he says, you know what, I really like this. I like the game plan. I like all of this. Because if not, if you're having any sort of questions, you're still willing to have the second interviews and they're not doing anything. Up until this, we were all like, what are they even doing? Are they moving at all?
It's a good question. And
how many
here's why.
second interviews did they have last year? They had one.
Yeah. And I'm going to go there, Mace. Like, they don't want to have, it's clear, they don't want to have multiple second interviews. They want to have one second interview and then offer him the job. They don't want to cloud it up. I laughed when I heard the Colts are having 7 second interviews. I mean, give me a break. Who wants to be part of that mess, to be honest? No, Mason's right. It's one, Rachel. One. They only want to have one. If they have to have more after that, they already know who they want. They want DeMeco Ryans, okay? I mean, that's it. We know this now. They didn't bring anybody in this week. Mike Kliss is reporting saying he's the front runner. I trust Mike. They can't interview in person DeMeco Ryans until after the NFC Championship game. No, guys, we know who they want right now, okay? I don't know. They probably didn't want him at the beginning because they didn't know him. So his interview must have been amazing. So I'll give DeMeco Ryans props. He did something. He did something in that interview to go from basically an absolute kind of, last place in the horse race to coming down the stretch in first place to the degree that he is probably going to get to make the choice. So no, there aren't going to be multiple interviews unless he chooses Houston.
Do you think that's wise though? Because personally, yes. I disagree. I think you should have multiple second interviews, especially when you're bringing in the 2 primary money people to handle the second interviews. What the search committee is saying is, we hope the people with the last name that have the last name Walton, that have the primary thrust of money involved with this, that they're going to sign off on what we recommend.
All right. Well,
what if Rob Walton just says, I don't like the answers this guy gave?
That's a great point, because I think here's what's going on. I don't think there have been formal second interviews, but I do believe there's been conversations that Greg Penner has been having with several of the candidates after the initial interview. So I don't know how you guys want to classify that, but I think there's been a stream of communication since the interviews. And I believe he's done that with probably several of the candidates. I think Rob Walton bought this thing for his kids as a fun thing. Rob Walton didn't really want to be bothered by all this crap, so why does Rob Walton want to sit through, and what does Rob Walton know anyway about this stuff? No. This is simply a Greg brings him in, and listen, if they bring him in, they know they got him, okay? They know they got him if he's actually here.
You really think that?
Oh, yeah, because DeMeco Ryans will tell them. Everything will be out there. He'll know what's what. Don't forget, guys, they can move forward through agents with offers, and everybody can know what's going on before you rubber stamp it. I think I wouldn't even call it a second interview. I would call it the coronation.
Well, so wouldn't you say then that DeMeco Ryans, the concern about him going to Houston would be unfounded in that case?
I think here we go. I mean, I think a lot of things are happening behind the scenes with agents trying to figure stuff out right now. I mean, it's a heck of an exciting weekend for DeMeco Ryans.
So essentially, if DeMeco Ryans interviews with the Broncos first, you believe that he's going to become the next Broncos head coach?
I don't think they let him out of the building. He's here. If he lands here, if boots are on the ground in Denver, he's going to be the next Broncos head coach for the next, at least, minimum 3 years, and hopefully much longer.
Well, it's 3 years. I think it's 3 years for this reason. If you don't fix Russell Wilson, you have to give him and his staff legitimate time to
absolutely
to work with Caleb Williams or Drake May. Whoever you get.
Yeah, you're giving me my dream scenario here, Mace.
I know, but they would probably have to trade up to do it. Because I think the type of season you're looking at, if it doesn't work out this year, is like 6-11, right? somewhere in that range. So you're picking around 9 or 10, which means, yeah, you'll have to trade up, but don't tell me that you can't go from 9 to 1 or 9 to 2. Of course you can.
Well, you guys, it was interesting. I'm glad we got a little bit of a little spark to the coaching talk today. It was definitely fun. If you are an Avs fan and you did hear about the trade yesterday, just a heads up, Matt Nieto will be playing tonight. So definitely tune in if you're able to. And yeah, big trade right there. They're starting the rolling. So it's going to be fun to see what they're able to do to hopefully make a playoff run. But as always, an absolute pleasure. What do you got, DMAC?
A note, Cale Makar was not part of the morning skate. He has missed a bunch of games in a row. They only have 2 games before the All-Star game. I think this is I think they just got to rest Cale.
Makar is playing tonight. Jake, just let us know.
He is playing?
Jake, I am getting the correct person. Cale Makar is playing per reports.
Okay. Yep. All right. But he was not part of the morning skate. But okay. So Bednar must have been asked about and said he was going to play. All right, cool. Good to know. Good.
We'll take
I was surprised if he's playing tonight and he hasn't played. I'm surprised he didn't take part in the morning skate. But okay, good enough. There you go.
Rest is important. Like we tell Russell Wilson, sleep and rest are important. Get it. All right. As always, an absolute pleasure. Thank you guys for hanging with us through the technical difficulties as well. I loved seeing all your comments of like, oh, you guys are back. So we love that you tune in every single day. A huge thank you to Mason DMAC as always. And we'll be back tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Have a wonderful Thursday, everybody. See you in the morning. Bye.